Coming to you live from my apartment, it's Rob Has a Podcast. And now here's a guy who can never stop talking about my big, long pod. I am Rob Cesternino. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our feedback show here for episode number 2. Back on a Monday, a little bit earlier than normal for what I plan to do this season, but happy to have you here with us, whether you're enjoying this live or in the podcast feed. We've got a great guest here with us today. She's coming off of a late night covering the Oscars. Of course, she is, just all over the place over on post-show recaps, in addition to RHAP Game Night and the Off-Speed Sports. Please welcome back Grace Leeder. Grace, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Rob. It's a little bit tricky to find some time in my schedule, but like finding a tooth and poop, I found some.
You found some.
I found some
Appreciate
time
it.
for you. Mm-hmm.
Wow, Grace, you are coming off of what, Oscars Daily? You watched a movie,
Yes.
one of the Oscar movies, and really making me look so bad because I had the whole year and I didn't even do it.
Do you know what? I'm more impressed. I feel like a lot of people try to get all the Oscars. I actually watched every Oscar nominee except for one movie that I could not find. It was only nominated for Best Song, so whatever.
Wow.
So yeah, I watched a lot of movies. It's my biggest movie year, I think. I was very excited. But not just that, it's also The Last of Us finale was last night as well.
Oh
so
my
Mom
God.
and I chatted about I know, a busy Sunday night and a busy
How'd you
Monday.
do all that?
We maybe get to record The Last.
Yeah,
of Us,
okay. That's
reveal the
Don't pull the curtain back too far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we'd say
All
it every week that we get screeners, so it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Grace, very exciting to have you here with us on the Survivor Feedback Show. We've got a lot of great questions from the listeners of RHAP. Of course, you can send them in all week long. Rob's website.com/survivor questions. Rob's website.com/voicemail. I've enjoyed doing the Survivor Feedback Show on Monday so much, Grace, because I've been trying to. I've taken this on to come in, having listened to, if not the entirety, try to get through as much as I can through all of the Survivor RHAP ups too.
Wow. Impressive. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So now I know everybody's takes on the Survivor episode.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. What? Yeah. I mean, a great sleuth of content over here on RHAP. So
yep.
Yeah.
So very, very fun stuff over the weekend. I think we have a fun episode here to talk about on the Survivor Feedback Show. All right, Grace, tell me, okay, Survivor 44, we're 2 episodes in, okay?
Yeah.
And I know with everything you're doing, also not to mention Succession Daily also.
That's right. New season next week. The final season. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell me, what have you thought about Survivor 44?
I mean, there's this thing I think that happens every season. I think like for the last however many years that, boy, this show is really good at casting people. It's really good at finding these people. I think, we'll obviously chat a lot about Carolyn today, who maybe is one of the best Survivor casting finds ever, maybe. She's incredible. But it's like that thing where you're watching the episode, you kind of like, as sort of the immunity challenge is happening and you realize one of the tribes is going to lose, you get so nervous because you're like, well, I pretty much like almost everybody. I did think you chatted with Gabby, you talked about like that perhaps this season has a little bit of Australian Survivor energy of maybe over editing some people and under editing some people, but I still, I feel like, when I talk about tonight that maybe some people are like, I'm, maybe more excited for Carolyn to stay. It's no shame to Helen. She didn't get anything on the show really. So I feel bad, but it's the casting on this thing is really, really excellent. I'm sure we'll chat through a lot of the advantage stuff, which is a big theme of these new seasons of Survivor, the new era, but it's fun. It's fun.
Could you bake that in terms of, and I talk about the Australian Survivor editing style. Enough about Australian Survivor. Well, it's really good, okay? But in all seriousness, like, could you cast the season of, it's like, all right, let's find like 12, 13 really good people, and then let's find like 5 or 6 duds that don't know how to play the game. They'll surely be the first to go, especially in the new era.
Well, so I've been thinking about this.
Can we cast some cannon fodder for once?
I think that you eventually found your way and sort of chatting through, and I think Helen revealed sort of that, like, knowing that Sarah didn't have a vote is like essentially what makes it really easy for Carson to go with Jam and Carolyn this
Yeah.
past week, because essentially you don't want to force a 2-2 tie. There's really no way out of that scenario, so you just go with Carolyn Jam. But at the same time, I also, you and Gabby came on to the idea that, like, oh yeah, Sarah didn't have a vote, and so that could have been part of the equation, which I think is absolutely right. I was also just wondering, like, does Carson just go with Jam and Carolyn because they're you know, from the show's perspective, I don't mean this personally to, like, Helen and Sarah, but Jam and Carolyn are so fun. They're such fun television, and I'm sure, like, you know, enigmas of people out there to, like, be around. And is that just, like, alluring? And so I think that this, when you're talking about, can the show cast 12 people who are, like, the most out there personalities and have all these other people? The risk, you would think, is like, well, what if all the, I mean, I guess you can't have all of them go out if you have enough, like, firecrackers, but you just don't, you're worried that the duds go far in the game.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
then
more of
they're
a Big
sitting in the
Brother
end
thing
game.
because
Yeah.
you know, I think that Big Brother might actually cast this way, but then the duds all end up working together, and
Right.
that's like most seasons of Big Brother. But you have three tribes, Grace. This is the one thing that three tribes could protect us against. It's our dud firewall. Put 4 or 5 people out there that don't know what they're doing, that stink at the game, that we won't be sad to lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's quite interesting, you know, an interesting theory. But I think that's just the fear. But then I'm wondering, like, as I see, like, Carson is like, I want to work with you, kid. I want to work with you, Danny. I'm like, I know that obviously, like, the vote, not Sarah not having her vote matters, but I wonder if just, like, you know, if you put enough interesting people on there, people get attracted to the interesting people. So
Yeah. Well, that Carson decision, there's so much there. You know, I'd love to talk more about all of it, and you know, there's so much going on there, just in that tribe alone. You know, a lot was made about Carson's decision, and you know, and that extra vote, and it's sort of like, okay, well, now that we sort of understand why he did what he did, but I was thinking about this morning, Grace, that let's just pretend hypothetically, like, that Helen had her vote, okay, and it was both things were completely equal to go with. That which side do you feel like would be better long term for Carson?
I mean, the way the show showed it, it does feel like potentially Sarah and Helen are sort of, you know, perhaps more in line with Carson, a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more strategically minded. And I don't think that means that Jam and Carolyn are not strategically minded. Actually,
Yeah.
Carolyn has been very fun in terms of the way she's actually thinking about some of this stuff, clearly getting a lot of advice from her son. You know, there's the question of, like, does Carson think he can control Jam and Carolyn? Will they listen to him as somebody perhaps he's a little bit more strategic and he can sort of influence that? Whereas maybe if Helen and Sarah a little bit more, and I think you said Helen had Sarah lost her vote, right?
Sorry.
So
Sorry
no,
about
that's
that.
okay. I just wanted to correct so we don't, nobody ats us, you know.
Please.
You know, I think that potentially there are people who might be more likely, whereas I think it does seem like, you know, the way Jam is trying to protect Carolyn, I feel like is appealing potentially to Carson, although it's, you know, they're kind of a 2 against his 1, but I feel like potentially either way, he's a 1 against, you know, in a 3-person alliance. So that's tricky. I don't know. I go back and forth a lot on whether I think that, like, if all things even, they all have their votes. Is Carolyn being voted out? And I guess also you'd have to take out that, like, it does seem like maybe there was some. Although Helen seems to think that, like, Carson thought that Helen had the idol, so it does seem like they were never thinking that Carolyn had the idol.
Yeah.
I think so the other piece that I think encourages me to think that Carson goes with Carolyn and Jam is that Carson is the individual who was selling merch before the season started.
Yes.
And I do the face on a pillow. This is him, right? He had the store. I do think, like, there's an argument you made that, like, you could stand out against Helen and Sarah maybe a little bit more, but there's also the thing of, like, Carolyn and Jam, they're going to get a ton of screen time, and so by proxy, this Carson won in on that, and so, you know, he's selling merch with his face on it. You know.
See, that's interesting, and I mentioned this on the know-it-alls with Gabby, as like, this is the kind of thing Steven really would have wanted to talk about, of like, do you want to go with the people that are going to get a lot of screen time?
Yeah.
And okay, well, so I'm sort of like, maybe the rising tide lifts all boats, and you're part of, like, this really fun, iconic alliance, or do you want to be maybe the most colorful character in the group that's not going to be racking up a bunch of confessionals? That I think that is a good question. But I do think, just going back to the original thought experiment of which side is Carson better on, I kind of feel like that because, the game is so meta. I think that Carson rolls up into the merge and it's like Carson, Helen, and Sarah. I think the other tribe's instantly like, all right, we got to get those three out, as opposed to,
yes,
yeah, Carolyn and Jam. I mean, that's kind of where the game has evolved to, of that you have to be like a good player, like camouflaged as this person's just a character.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that's been happening a lot, is that like the minefield of like, you make the best move and then you're immediately the target. The more strategic you are, and the more that you look like you're leading moves, I think that the more dangerous that is. I do think there's a world where one of the ways in which he's better off with Helen and Sarah is that I feel like he might be able to blend in as not the head of the snake, as it were, on that side, as opposed to if it becomes clear that he's sort of like grouping, leading Jam and Carolyn together. Is it like, well, if we cut off the head of the snake, if we get rid of Carson, will Carolyn and Jam free? Which I feel like is potentially underestimated. I feel like even myself, I'm underestimating sort of both Jam and Carolyn's strategic ability. But I agree with you. I do think, like, I mean, we look who won last season. I mean, like, Gabler makes it all the way to the end, and I think he's really underestimated. You don't even to the point of in episode 1, he does kind of make he makes a move at the merge.
And we're all like,
I'm getting out this person. Like, cool.
Gabler, OTTN, no way he's going to win.
Great job, dude. It does not taken seriously. So I think that I think that is right. That, like, I think there's a little bit more, it's like hiding in plain sight with Jam and Carolyn, potentially, if you head to the merge with that group.
Here we go again. Grace, you mentioned cutting off the head of the snake.
Yes.
This was a crazy thought. I watched the episode again this morning, and I'm noticing, that there's this whole sequence with Carolyn, and she's up in the tree and she finds a snake, and she's like, oh my god, it's a snake, and then telling everybody, like, don't come over here, there's just more snakes over here, all these snakes. And then, Grace, we get to the puzzle, we get to at the end of the challenge. Was this foreshadowing?
That's right, it is.
Did they foreshadow the snake being the ultimate end to the puzzle? And
wait,
Sarah,
production. I know. Yeah.
Sarah couldn't do it. Maybe if she would have practiced on the snakes that they put in, just like okay, big deal, Matthew. Oh, you got plywood in your backyard. Yeah. Sarah had real freaking snakes that she could have been practicing this challenge on, and did she do it? No.
Wow, that's a great call. Do you think Jeff was like, production, that challenge we have later on with the snake, we move that up a little bit, we move it up, work double and get that one made, finish that one. Big episode for animals and trees. Rob also had a crab in a tree.
Crab living in a tree. Living in a tree, not their native habitat, I don't believe.
I don't think so. I think actually that crab was stuck, I have to think.
Yeah. Big weekend of watching people catch crabs also, after I watched Outlast with Mike Bloom and Chappelle this weekend as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what this is?
I do know what it is. Yeah, apparently incredibly vicious survival show. Yeah, I watched a bit of
reality show.
I've heard. I'm excited to watch.
Yeah. Could you imagine Carolyn on a future season of Outlast?
I don't think so. I think for her sake, pass on that. I think everybody actually should probably pass on being on Outlast. Yeah.
The Carolyn out there in the Alaskan wilderness.
I'm so scared.
I mean, I could see it. Anyway, so that's a really wild show. 16 people dropped off in the Alaskan wilderness, and all hell breaks loose. We did part 1 on Nothing But Netflix the other day, and then we will finish the entire series with Mike Bloom this upcoming weekend on Nothing But Netflix. But, we're talking about Carolyn a little bit here. And Grace, it's just like, she is so impressive all the way around. What a find Carolyn was or is. And Grace, I wanted to go back to, you covered the Oscars last night, and you covered, of course, so many great acting performances and best actresses only one best actress, but others were nominated. Yeah. Is there anybody as talented as Carolyn?
No, I mean, I was trying to think and do the comp of like which actress is she, but I actually think she's better suited to a movie. Carolyn is everything everywhere all at once, right?
I constantly.
Yeah, she's doing everything. She's so hilarious. I mean, she got called Cher, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes. That's according to Jam. This is what he said.
She's like a mix of Goofy and Cher.
Like a mix of Goofy and Cher. Also Oscar nominated, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Moonstruck?
Goofy, I don't think Goofy has been nominated yet.
Should have been. He was robbed. Can I share with you? Can I share or Goofy with you, Grace? So this is Jam says, okay, that we have Carolyn. She is like Goofy and Cher. So I said, okay, bet. All right, let's see what you can do. And so I love the artificial intelligence.
I know you do, yeah.
So I went over to the wizardry that is Dolly Mini 2 or Dolly 2, not even Dolly Mini. I said, can you give me Goofy mixed with Cher? Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so Grace, all right, this is what Dolly 2 spit out.
Whoa.
I don't think this is Carolyn.
So first of all, no arms.
No arms.
Or maybe tucked into her bra, apparently.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Interesting. And then behind her back.
There was a couple different versions. One of the versions, like, I kind of think was topless. I'm like, I don't think I can share this.
Yeah. I believe I did see this on your Twitter. I want to make sure I have the right shout out, but I do notice there is something in her bra which might be an advantage. I think this
yes,
which this is inconceivable. It says appears to be an advantage hiding in the bra. Maybe Carson was onto something. I think it was Jam.
Well, yeah, it was Jam said,
like, if I had boobs, I would put the idol in my boobs,
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
So
no, this does not give me Carolyn vibes, but
yeah. I think where Jam is coming from, especially with Cher, I feel like that like every like Cher impression is always like she always has her tongue out of her mouth, and so I think that's really it. And
I think it's the voice. It's the voice. I think of like the way she has with the exasperated like and I can't do a Cher impression, but I do feel in some of the confessionals, it's like you can hear it. I think in Carolyn with her Cher impression. Yeah.
Here, this is a good one. I think of Carolyn in her confessional.
I'm gonna have to be sneaky with this, but it's hard. It's very, very, very hard for me. And I don't. This is the game where like deception and like, so I have to be better at like playing Survivor.
That's it. You could hear the Cher in there. I think it's a good call from Jam actually.
Yeah. Now, as far as Goofy goes, hey, what about Goofy is like Carolyn?
Well, I mean, you comped her to Jim Carrey. I think
that she's like a Jim Carrey. Yeah.
Yeah. The elastic face and just I think the general like. So I watched the premiere at with my good friends Bryce and Wen. They were in Toronto. I watched it, and I will say, so fun. Great to meet.
They've got a great Survivor podcast too, Grace.
They do.
Wait till you hear what those guys thought about this episode.
Yeah. So very fun to get to meet a lot of survivors and of course Big Brother folks and Big Brother Canada folks. Is very fun. It's a tad hard to hear the episode at a live Bryce and Wen event. You typically catch some and then you watch it when you PVR it at home. I was standing next to Jenny Autumn and I said we could tell. We said, God, they yeah, I know. We met in person, and Phil T was there as well. And we're watching the episode. You can't, sometimes it's hard to hear. And I said, boy, they love Carolyn, because all we could kind of see was like the B-roll, like face footage of Carolyn. So you could tell, even though we didn't really hear the audio of the episode, we could completely tell that Carolyn was immediately such a favorite of Survivor production.
Really, Grace,
watch her with this, like, the expressions on her face.
Yeah, what you missed was you missed a lot of this.
I watched it. I did rewatch it. I rewatched it. So I got it.
And a little of.
Oh my gosh!
My gosh! Yeah. Are you working on a Carolyn impression? Are you working on that? Is that in the arsenal?
I don't know about a Carolyn impression. I am thinking about like just like an all Carolyn soundboard of
That's
like
good.
just like a piano of like the Carolyn shrieks and yells and just or like a remix of all Carolyn noises.
That's good. I like that. I think that's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just so it's so good. I love it.
Can I ask you a question about
Anything, Grace?
She gives the metaphor, or not the metaphor. She gives a real anecdote. She's
Yeah.
determined to find the idol because when her son lost his tooth, he swallowed it.
Yeah.
And she searched far and wide in his poop because she was not going to let her son go to bed without a tooth under her pillow. Tooth fairy notoriously does not come unless there's actually a tooth under your bed. I know Dr. Amanda, I believe, asked the best strategy for finding a swallowed tooth.
Yes. Well, Amanda had said on Twitter of like just put a tic tac there. But as Liana was talking about this on the B&B, sometimes these kids are like let me see it. Like they don't believe you. They're skeptical. These kids.
Well, about their own
your body language is telling me deception.
About their
arms
own
are
tooth?
folded, Mom.
Yeah, that's right. About their own tooth, they want to see their own tooth. Surely they
think
know.
So. I think had it been lost, like I think it's like okay, well, like I do think that maybe, and I don't know, as we saw in this episode, maybe Carolyn doesn't want to be necessarily like under direct questioning.
Very true. I think the move is you loop your kid in and you're like, listen, I know that you swallowed the tooth. There's not much we can do. We got to try and trick the tooth fairy. We got to put a tic tac under there and see if it will work. And then when it works, like pull the scheme on the tooth fairy. I think that's the move, right?
Yeah, I get the sense that the child was very upset and felt like, okay, well, the tooth fairy will not come if we don't have the real tooth. And sometimes these kids are really like dug in on a thing. It's like, no, we'll fake it. Like, no, we can't. We have to.
It's just because you've set the standard that the tooth fairy. You've like it's your own fault. I think as a parent, if you've like really got to be the real tooth.
Grace, I can't tell you that I think it was this past year. I think that I inadvertently bumped into the elf on the shelf, and as much as I tried to tell the kids, it's going to be fine. Trust me. Trust me on this. We're fine. We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
Christmas is not in jeopardy. You gotta trust me on this. Like, no, Dad ruined Christmas. That's it. He touched the elf. You can't. Mom.
Wow, it's too bad your kids didn't get anything for Christmas, huh?
That's
bad. Yeah, this year
like,
he bumped into the elf.
Guys, no, trust me. We're good.
I do.
Okay.
I'm obviously not a parent. I have many nieces and nephews. I do think hilarious that parents have, the elf on the shelf, whoever invented that thing, you want to get the kids to behave. You say that the elf's watching you. I get it. Santa, he can see you when you're sleeping. We didn't have this. The parents have I love all the parents who are like, yeah, I had to wake up at like 4 a.m. because I forgot to move.
The pain is real, Grace.
I know.
Pain is real. Here's another one. Try to explain sometimes where that's where Mom, the tooth fairy didn't come last night.
Yeah.
Like, we must have forgot. You know what? We're supposed to email her. We're supposed to email. We didn't send the email. She didn't know to come. All right. Well, we're gonna fix this tonight.
Rough. Yeah. Well, it seems like Carolyn found the idol. So this is great news.
Is that a similar exercise? Do you feel like is looking for? I guess she said she wouldn't be stopped, but I guess is looking for the key in that way. Good practice.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like hidden in it's hidden at the base of the tree. It is like definitely not up in the tree. It's at the bottom of the tree. Both Danny and Carolyn's at the bottom of the tree. It just shows how relentless she is in trying to search, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure we can talk and never forget about the story of Carolyn and the tooth. All right. Grace, I want to talk about the number one question that we've been getting from the listeners over the last couple of days. And this has to do about the idol and the way that the idols are being put out there. And there's definitely some interesting things to talk about. When we were texting this morning, I asked you, what do you want to talk about? This was the number one thing on your list. And so let me go ahead and bring in a voicemail. We got it from so many different people. So shout out to everybody that called in with this question. But I'm going to play this one. Okay, this is from one of our listeners, Bryce.
Hey there, Rob and Grace. This is Bryce from the Motor City, Detroit, Michigan.
Yes.
Longtime patron, first-time feedback caller. My question today concerns the birdcage idols and the fake trinkets. My friends and I noticed while watching the other night that Carolyn's hidden idol was a coin, and Danny's fake trinket was also a coin. This got me thinking, and I found an online theory that thinks Tricky Probst is messing with the survivors' heads. It seems that what is a real idol on one beach is a fake on the other. I was just wondering if you can confirm or deny this twist, and I want your thoughts on how it might shake out. Can you imagine the wrinkles this will bring at the merge when no one knows what's real? Thanks for all that you do. Love me some RHAP. Bye.
Oh, okay. What a nice message here from Bryce. Okay. And so let me go ahead and share with everybody, okay, what Bryce is talking about. And so if you are on Survivor social media, I'm sure you probably have seen something about this. And it also came up on a lot of the other RHAP ups today, which is how I found I did not see about this. I'm like, wait, is that right? Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to for a very succinct reset of what we're talking about. So your friend and mine, your co-host and mine, okay, Mike Bloom had a good tweet putting all this into perspective. Okay, Mike says on Twitter, upon reviewing the Survivor 44 Birdcage idol finds, it looks like each tribe's real idol is indeed the fake idol of another tribe. So Ratu, the orange, we saw in the first episode, their real immunity necklace was the beads, and then they had a medallion, which was fake. Over on Soka, that was that's the green tribe. Okay. That is, they have a medallion, which Danny found, which is the real idol, and they have a coin, which is the fake idol. And then Carolyn, her real idol is the coin, but the beads are fake.
Wow. This is fascinating. I think it's really, so part of me really likes it. I think it's very clever. Yeah. I don't know that it's the best. I know Gabby was talking about how mad would you be if you find a fake idol? Like, they're giving full fake idols, right? And put it, essentially saying, put it back in the birdcage. Somebody else can find it. I'm not sure if people are rehiding their keys. They should be rehiding their keys as well.
We'll talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, so I think it's very fun, and it is going to create, I think, pretty fun tribal moments where I feel like I've said this in the past, that actually when the first Knowledge is Power got played, I think I tweeted out that, the thing that was very fun about that moment was that basically everybody knew about Knowledge is Power at that point. Like, at least some people did. And then they got to figure out how to try and play around it. So that's the first one where they tried to steal an idol. They gave it to somebody else. The Knowledge is Power advantage doesn't work. And so I get really conflicted because I do think Survivor has some interesting ideas. Yeah. And yet I think that part of me, and you want to talk about game theory, right, with this is like as if I invited you onto RHAP game night, Rob, but I only told you some of the rules and tell you all of the rules. It's like, I ripped out pages of the rule book and kept them hidden from you. Is I think where I think, and I get it from if you're creating a show, you obviously want, like, what they're hoping for, right, is people playing fake idols at Tribal and being told, like, someone being so sure this has to be a real idol. No, this is not a real idol. I'm sure it will create very fun moments, but it's very frustrating, I think, for like people who are playing the game, that like the rules are not laid out. The one thing that is to their advantage, I think, is that on Raw 2, everybody saw there's fake idols in the game. So it'll be very interesting to track that information as it flows out of that tribe. And there already has been some tribe sharing information. So I'm interested to see at least one tribe knows that there is fake idols out there, which could could be fun to see and track.
Yeah, well, this is why it's great to hear this from you, because you've played so many different board games and, of course, are so familiar with the rules of the different board games. And I think you come at looking at this from a person who plays games and says, okay, well, all right, if we're going to play the games, like, I need to know all the rules. I need to understand the rules. And then once we all know the rules, now we can play a game. And so the interesting thing this season has been that we have now gotten the Jeff Probst official Survivor podcast, not unofficial, just fly by night underdog little guy podcast like this one. Okay. The official Survivor podcast is out on fire. And it's been very illuminating because you get a lot of sort of like the why behind the creative of why does Survivor do the things that we, and it has been very fascinating to listen to. It's very well done, as you would expect from an official Survivor podcast. And so I really do encourage everybody goes and checks it out. But you get, especially this week, that there was an episode that was all about idols and advantages. Why are there so many there? What's the point of them? And Jeff talked about the creative process that goes into why that there are so many idols and advantages in the game. And I want to play a clip from it, Grace. I got into this a little bit with Jordan Kalish over the weekend on Survivor Academy in terms of advice for future players. But I do think that there is an important distinction that is happening on Survivor, where the producers really do look at Survivor as, how do we create the best TV? How do we create the most shocking moment for the viewers, as opposed to how do we create a game for the players? Here's Jeff talking about the creative process of idols and advantages.
I just do the same things we kind of talked about last week, only more specific. Like, I'll reverse engineer a result, meaning I will imagine a situation that I'd like to see happen and then figure out how to achieve it. Let's take, you want a player to not be able to vote because that would cause a dilemma. So you say, okay, I can't vote. How do we get there? They had to risk their vote. How do you get there? Well, they have to play a risk versus reward game. Okay, what's the risk reward? Well, the risk is you could lose your vote. The reward is you could gain a vote. Okay, what's the game? So you just keep going down this, and before you know it, you're spinning marbles out in the beach, and you've got a risk reward game.
It sounds to me like you're in your office talking to yourself again. Maybe you need to call Elon Lee up and have a little chat.
Good old Elon Lee.
Okay, so, and Jeff had talked about in the previous episode about how he was like, this is how he comes up with a lot of things that he sort of watches FBI interrogation videos. And then so it's like, okay, well, how do we get that kind of conversation? And so that there's a lot of what goes into it there. But furthermore, I think this is the part that I think is very interesting, and it kind of involves what you're talking about with knowledge is power.
Maybe another one, another way to do it. This is very basic storytelling. So if you're a storyteller, forgive me for rudimentary stuff, but a great way to start a story is to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen to somebody? And how could it become the best thing? That's a great way to start a story. Or you can flip it. What's the best thing that happens to somebody and how does it become the worst thing? That's where knowledge is power came from. Is I just started thinking about what would be the worst thing that could happen if you had a great alliance. And then it became, oh my God, what if everything you told your alliance partner they could use against you in the most personal way? And that's where knowledge is power is born. And what really made knowledge is power work is that it had to be specific. You can't just say, do you have an idol or an advantage? You have to know what they have. So in essence, it's a little bit like Go Fish, the game where you say, do you have an 8? And they go, no, go fish. The difference is I know you have an 8 because I looked in your hand, meaning you told me everything. And one of the things you see with knowledge is power is the mere possibility that it could be in the game will forever change the game. Because now when you trust somebody and tell them you have an idol, you could be killing yourself.
Okay. So some interesting things there. Now, Grace, that I think Jeff makes a good point of, like, from a storytelling perspective, and I'm sure as you've seen from all many of these movies, you know, starting off from a place of like, what's the best thing that could happen to somebody? What, and then how do you turn that into something bad, or vice versa? Great way to get into telling a story. But as far as a game player goes, like should the NFL like look at like, okay, well, what's like what would be the worst thing that could happen to
Pretty
a team?
great if
Like,
Tom Brady lost
what would
the
be the
Super
best
Bowl,
thing?
huh?
Like
That'd be great. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what if you were winning by 70 points, but then like sometimes
Yeah.
there could be like a special like thing hidden in the field that could be like a 60-point play.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't
Can
blame.
you imagine the look on everybody's face?
Yeah.
If that
I mean,
happened?
I always thought I wanted sports to be more like wrestling, right? Where I want like, the offensive lineman to turn around, rip off his jersey, and he's wearing the opposing team's jersey, like I want more of that, but maybe I want it to be more like Survivor, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I can't blame the Jeff for wanting to make the most entertaining television show he possibly can. And I think it's really interesting that he is basically trying to reverse engineer outcomes. I feel like that's really telling. I feel like there was this theory sort of that like they were throwing everything out there to get these exciting moments. It's very interesting that they're trying to reverse engineer
theory
them.
confirmed, Grace, because Jeff goes on to talk about in Survivor Game Changers how his idea for like the poster for the season, I don't know where like they put these like movie posters, was sort of like the end of Reservoir Dogs, where everybody is like pulling a gun on like everybody else has a gun pointed at somebody else. And they said it was such a great moment where Suri got advantage getting out of the game. That was the culmination of what they did by putting all the things in there. And so they think about, how do we get these moments? And so like what they are very like to the point of like leading the horses to water. They desperately want somebody to find the fake idol, like in the birdcage, play it, and say like, this is a real idol. Survivor, I found it, like it was in the thing. This is clearly a real idol. Go to a tribal council, like, Jeff, this is a real idol. I'm playing it, and then Jeff says, actually, this is a fake idol, and then and then watch that person's head explode at tribal council.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching the premiere, when I rewatched it, I was really excited by the Birdcage because I had not exactly thought through of like, put the fake idol back, put it back in the thing. What I thought was really fun was they obviously were a bit stuck. They can't really do the phrases anymore because it would be so obvious that that person has an idol. And I thought that the Birdcage was a really fun way of basically sort of creating a little bit of what they got out of the riskiness of the phrases in a new mechanism. That was really smart. That essentially, in my opinion, what I thought was going to happen is that like open the cage can't be closed. So now, you try to get the moment that like both Danny and Carolyn have this week of like, is it the right moment to go and open the bird? Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go, I'm going to take it. And I thought the way Carolyn played it was going to be the way it played out. I thought there was going to create really fun paranoia amongst the tribes. But I think in actuality, what they really want is the tribal moment. I think the other thing too is that the way Survivor,
the tribal council moment.
They want the tribal council moment. Yeah, sorry. And I think, that's also from a storytelling perspective, the fact that they are designing things. Well, when do you want the most exciting thing to happen in your episode? At the end of the episode. You want the stunner to end this is the way Survivor has always been, that the highlight of the episode, the thing we build up to, the way we design episodes is at the end of the episode somebody gets voted out. And if you can create the tension there, and then also I think one of the things that can be really frustrating about Survivor, I know last week there was a whole scene, I think it's of Sarah doing it's a deleted scene where she starts, and people are like, oh my God, why isn't that in there? I feel like this week, like Helen's really invisible. But what I think the show wants you at the end of the episode is like, oh my God, what just happened? And then, that fuels, obviously, when you talk to your coworkers or you listen to many podcasts.
They don't show you what happened.
But they don't show. But then the idea, I think it's like forward momentum, right? Of like, well, maybe we'll find out next week, which they don't do on either, right? But I feel like there's like this, like they're trying to build forward momentum to like the end of the episode, the tribal council. So that's where a lot of these, like, in my head, the advantage, what I thought was really fun was, oh, the birdcage will be empty. And everyone would say, oh my God, the birdcage is empty. And we basically get that this episode where like when they realize the bag has been open and they're all, I love that there's 4 of them, even though there's 5 people in the tribe. Let's all look at each other's bags without Carolyn. And they don't think Carolyn has the idol or whatever. But it wasn't really about that, I don't think. I think with the fake idol in there, I think the whole thing is how do we create tribal council moments, I think. And so I think that's also, as he's talking about trying to reverse engineer these moments, where do you want the climax of your episode at the end of the episode of tribal council?
Sure. And Taryn talked about this a little bit on the stock watch and then sometimes they give you like at the beginning of the next episode, as you were saying, a little bit of like, oh, actually, so what happened at the last tribal council was, and it's just like, I guess that they are maybe completely editing this for the binge for future people and not even like for the people that are watching it week to week, because as Taryn was saying, like, I don't care about it now. I cared about it a week ago when I watched the show. What? Like I forgot that I cared about this.
I don't know. I think, I think about my mom a lot. My mom is probably listening. Hello, Mom, if you're listening. She listens to a lot of RHAP, kind of specifically Survivor content. And I think about, text me after this what you think, Mom. But I think that when my mom, has gotten more into this. Maybe my dad is actually a better example of like, is it more fun? Do they think it's more fun? When I don't think Survivor's fun. This idea, like that the surprise moment at a tribal council, that like the blind side that happens, even though this week I feel like it felt like they kind of tried to manufacture a blind side, even though I don't think it was really a blind side. I think everybody knew Helen was going home, except maybe Helen, and even Helen might have thought she was going home, right? Like what's Helen think is happening in the boat?
I disagree. I don't think that Helen knew, and I don't know if Sarah knew.
I think Sarah knew?
That'll be interesting to see we'll find out in the beginning of the next episode.
So they must have really assumed they had Jam, right? So, but this is exactly what I'm saying. This is what I'm thinking, is that like, does the show think it's worth it to do that, and also maybe get a little bit of like, what happened? Like my parents turn to each other and be like, I wonder what do you think happened? Instead of getting like, that's worth it for them, I think, to get a little bit more of a surprise. And I think this is the way Survivor has pretty much always been, to get that surprise moment at tribal council, because it's the way the show is set up. Someone's going home. You don't want to make it incredibly obvious that person is going home. And so you have to withhold some information. I've been talking about this actually with Succession, Rob, as we've been rewatching the show, that Succession is a very, cards on the table show, and you basically see everything that's happening. And when you think like, oh, I wonder if that thing happened, it probably didn't, because we didn't see it except for their finales. And you can trust that they've shown you everything, so that in the finale they can basically withhold information and then shock you and surprise you. But that's not what Survivor, every episode needs to be exciting.
And what I would argue is that, I think that the best version of this storytelling on Survivor is, okay, we have all of the information of like that basically a player could go this way or go this way, and we understand the compelling reasons why a player would make either decision, but we don't know what they're going to ultimately do. And they go into that voting booth, and we don't really know until Jeff counts the votes. And then at the end, because we've seen both perspectives of why they would do a certain thing, we can argue, did they make the right decision? But we understand why they might have done this or that. Ultimately, a lot of times I think that Survivor just basically just like hides information, and you sort of you're shocked, but you're confused shocked, as opposed to, I can't believe that person did this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's as effective as it could be, but I do kind of understand from a TV show creating perspective, why they think this is what they need to do, because the alternative is like a bunch of episodes, which I think like, you rewatched all the seasons during in 2020, and while there are these that like, the tension can build to time where like, then there is this like, moment of surprise, and you've been like lulled into complacency because like a vote feels pretty obvious. This is where like, pagongings are like, they're tough to edit, because like, what is the surprise, right? Like maybe they'll flip, but they probably won't. And so I don't think Survivor wants that every episode of like, because they don't want the episode where it's like, seems so obvious that someone's going home and then they just go home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I will just also say that there's a lot of reasons, I think, for the way that this show is this way. But I do think that 2 tribes would help this, where I feel like that being split and spread across 3 different tribes and trying to tell the story of 3 different tribes, I think ultimately hurts, where we would have been able to maybe like get a little bit more why this is happening here in this tribe, even at the expense of potentially maybe there being a couple of less important characters to the story being fleshed out.
Yeah, it did feel like they were maybe back a little bit to like, not doing 3 tribes, but then they've certainly come back to it in full force. I think the thing that gets tricky, actually 3 tribes would be okay if we weren't in such an advantage heavy era of the game. Like essentially the only thing we're really able to get from the green tribe this episode is Danny finding the idol. Love Danny. I want to shout out Danny. I think he's great. I think he's really fun. And he finds out, but that's really the only content we get from that tribe. As opposed, sorry, we do get Franny and Matt. I do apologize.
Yeah, so, and we got stuff to talk about with them too.
Yes, but it just that's a whole segment where we're spending somebody looking to open the birdcage instead of what might be explaining more tribe dynamics on that tribe. So it's tricky.
Grace, you mentioned about hiding the birdcage key. Okay.
Yeah.
Eliza Rush has a question. Should Danny and or Carolyn rehide the birdcage key? I've heard a lot of people mentioning it as the best thing to do with the fake idol. But is that fake idol still useful if they don't know who ends up finding it?
I think it still is, because the chances are, so essentially, but if we go full extreme, it's either somebody you're allied with who comes to you and is like, look, I got it. Assuming they tell you, in which you can say, that's fake, you should go put that back. I guess maybe not, because that's tricky. That'd be a tricky situation. If your ally comes to you and says, I found it, and then but you haven't told them about your idol yet. That's tricky, maybe. But if it's your enemy, does it matter if they have a fake idol? Like, yeah, it's you might want to know, but I mean, they might, confidence sometimes kills you in Survivor, being so sure of an outcome. And if someone has an idol they think they can play and it turns out to be fake, I don't think that's bad, especially if they're not with you.
Yeah. This is so hard because you just like where, going back to the Carson body language thing of like, okay, well, I think I know this based on body language. It's just so dangerous because you don't know necessarily like how the other human beings who are, we're all weird creatures. You don't know how anybody's going to necessarily react to all of this. Like there's been so many different theories of like, oh, go and plant the key and then somebody else will find it and somebody else has the fake idol. But, as I talked about with Mike Turner the other day, like maybe like even having a fake idol might give you the confidence that you need to like maybe making like big moves and like playing of like a more aggressive game. And now all of a sudden you sort of like embolden one of your enemies. Jack Atkins on the Purple Pants podcast had a wild idea he said that Danny should go and find the key himself and tell everybody, hey, I found the key. And then go and take out the fake idol and say, hey, everybody, guess what? I have an idol and I'm playing it at the next tribal council. And then you're safe at the next tribal council because people think you have an idol. And then after that tribal council, now everybody's freaking out when Jeff says this actually is a fake idol. And you're like, what? Well, which one of you did this to me? But then maybe you're dividing you're cracking your whole tribe down the middle.
That's bold. That's a bold move. I mean, I do think as much as I said that I want everybody to know the rules, I do think this is really interesting. This the 3 fake idols in circulation that could all, one of them for sure kind of gets flagged as being at least the people in the Orange Tribe know it's fake. But they may be able to still use it against the other tribes. I do think it can cause a lot of chaos. And I mean, I think this is the other sort of net outcome is that, Jeff is trying to engineer a result, but also I think there's sometimes like you put something in there, you don't actually know how people are going to try to use the thing that you put in there, and they'll come up with these like very interesting solutions to try and use it that create for fun television.
I think that like what the standoff that they're trying to create, if I had to guess, like going back to what Jeff said on the On Fire podcast, like the scene in the movie that they're trying to create are that there are basically two guns. Like one person has the real gun, the other person has the fake gun, and there's confusion about whose gun actually works.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah. There's a real gun, and then there's a gun that has little bubbles. It's gonna pop out.
A gun that shoots blanks, right?
Blanks. Yeah.
Are you feeling
Mhm.
lucky, punk?
Yeah. But they want that also 3 times. We want the scene 3 times because there are 3 fake idols. There's a fake idol for every real idol. So 3 guns, three guns with blanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So this is just going to be all like a very interesting. This is something from this is from Survivor Global that Shannon had Lisa Holmes on from Survivor New Zealand, who's always great. They had a lot of interesting discussions. Big gamer. Yeah, that's what I want to go back to, where that Lisa, who loves Survivor, said like for the players, that if a player hypothetically takes a fake idol given to them by production and then ultimately plants it in a way that another person is tricked, does the tricker ultimately even get that much credit for doing something where they basically got like a fresh fake idol out of the box from Survivor? Like, is that even impressive to a jury, as opposed to back in the day of like, say, like but whether it was Bob Crowley or David Wright, who, made a fake idol to trick Jay. Like, if you were just like getting a fake idol, just finding it with the regular idol, and there's 3 of them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like how much could this like if it gets played in the jury phase, how much does this actually sway the jury to say, wow, what a great move, when it's just something
you just tricked me with the fake idol that production gave you.
Yeah.
How was I supposed to know? It was a production idol that was identical to one of the actual immunity idols.
I mean, when you talk about one of the things I think it's about the fake idol plays that we've seen is I do feel like you have to have like one extra move in the tribal that's not just you fooled someone into playing an idol. Like I don't think the like sort of embarrassment move works is like super great for your game anyway, of the like I tricked you. I believe that like there's no such thing as like a bitter juror. Like I think like you have to try and maneuver people, and if you made someone upset and they're not going to vote for you, then that's what happened. That's part of the game. So I think in this case, I think you'd almost have to like pair it with something else. So like your actual idol play, I think, could like balance that out of not just utilizing the fake idol. I think you gotta have you gotta have an add-on. It's gotta be a 2-parter. Yeah.
Okay. A couple other things that I want to bring up that I think are interesting discussion points that came up from Shannon and Lisa. Okay. Shannon mentioned about the idea of that if you are Helen, should, based off of the history of people who go to the Shipwheel Island, okay? It seems like, and I talked about this in the Burning Question video from this week, what happens to players who lose their votes? It seems like that you yourself, you lose your vote, Grace, that you tend to be fine.
Yeah.
Me, your number one ally, I get screwed. That if your number one ally goes on the trek, do you need a new number one ally?
Yeah, cut them. You gotta cut ties, break up. I was thinking about did I have I was thinking about a more Oscar nominee pairing, which is I don't know if you've seen the Banshees of Inisherin, Rob.
It's in my queue, Grace.
It's really good. It's really good. And I don't want to spoil it because if people have not seen it, there is a thing. But there's a big piece of this is like some things you lose. And it's about basically a friend breakup. It's about these 2 male friends who decide to break up. And I feel like, part of this is like Sarah loses her vote and has to break up essentially with Helen. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know whether she knew Helen was going or not, but their friendship is over.
I don't think anybody knows that question yet.
Yeah, very interesting. So I was comparing Sarah to the Banshees of Inisherin. She loses her vote, much like what Brendan Gleeson loses in the movie, and ends up losing her friend because of it. Yeah.
Very sad. What's that? The Banshees of Ed Sheeran?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. A great movie. I love it.
Good soundtrack. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's very interesting that you losing your vote. I mean, there is the thing to, like the question about whether or not they actually knew that Carolyn had the idol too, of like this balance between, and Helen voting for Carolyn, I think it's very interesting that it didn't ever switch off of Carolyn, especially if they ever thought that she might have.
But nobody
the
seemed to
idol,
think that Carolyn actually
know.
had the idol.
which is astounding.
And,
It was the
well,
four of them
also
coming
because
back, but-
and this has been confirmed from some of the other exit interviews that in the episode they make it seem like Carolyn is running away and the thing is still swinging and they were all still together, and it's like,
no, I don't. Yeah.
And everyone is watching the show like, you idiots, how could this be?
Yeah.
You fools, like Carolyn's the only one that's not there. But what Helen had said was that actually Carolyn was doing one of her interviews at that time, and when they came up on that, so this was actually not at all like the same time, so that she was not really ever thought of as a suspect.
Yeah, so there was no Shipwheel Island this week, but I was thinking about it from last week of, all these people who like do or don't want to go, and I think it's not Sarah who knew which rock was being pulled, was it?
No,
it
that was
her?
Lauren. That was
Lauren. So I, in my gut says like, why would you go? Don't go first. Don't go first. But then, as you're saying, like, it's not really you who ends up like, you lose your vote and you're screwed. It's and I don't know what what's the logic here of like keeping in Sarah over Helen, other than that Carson seemed convinced that Helen might have had an idol. But no, if you know that somebody has lost their vote, what is the advantage to keeping? Is that there's this idea that Matthew plays a shot in the dark last week because he doesn't have to show his loyalty, right? Kane ends up being the only person who ends up sort of like putting a flag in the ground and showing something. And is it like, that little bit of like, well, they're not going to vote, and potentially like, what is it about that thing that person does not get voted out? I think it's very interesting.
About the person who loses their vote.
Yeah. And then the fact that they don't seemingly become the target, that like, even if people know they don't have a vote, it's like, well, that's the easy vote. We'll get them out. What is it about not having your vote that makes you more likely? But does it just lower your threat level?
Well, Grace, and this is, I do the survivor burning question, and I try to spend 20, 30 minutes really doing a deep exploration and research project on one specific question. And that is what I did for this specific week of that. Lose your vote mean lose your game? Huh? And so I did some research into that, and really, I can't tell you exactly why players do not vote for that person. Maybe it's just because the threat of that they have their thing. But I do think that there can be benefits. I don't think that those benefits are early on, because I do think that what you see is that people lose their ally. That almost all of these people that risk their vote early on, that they all have lost out in agency in these small tribes in deciding, like, go back to Dwight last season, who risked his vote in the first episode of season 43. He was not able to vote on the vote where Justine ended up going home. And he was closer with Justine and Noelle than he was with the Jesse, Cody, NECA side of things. And ultimately, he was fine. He was Jesse's survivor wife, but he didn't get a say in which person went home next. And I think that ultimately just is like something that piles up. It's like you're headed down like a bad choice road. And while it's not imminent doom for your game, that it ends up being a thing that has like cost a lot of survivors in the new era.
Well, I think this is potentially really bad news for Franny. I think Matt has 2 lost votes. I think that's very interesting. But you can see the way Matt is almost a bit defeated in this episode. This could not have started worse to have lost 2 votes. Yeah,
Grace, forget things have started worse. I mean, he came in with things going pretty bad.
What kind of puppy?
I just want like a little pup, and I want it to have like all pink stuff, and like even if it's a boy dog, and just be the cutest thing.
This is Claire talking about the dog that she wants to get.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of bad etiquette, right? Like, Grace, if I'm telling you about like some like purchase that I want. Like, you don't need to tell me that mine is gonna suck, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I had actually encountered a puppy this morning.
Mhm.
Puppies are tough. I don't know.
Puppies are pretty good.
tough. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what Matt has to say.
It couldn't be the cutest thing.
Why? Your dog? What kind of dog is it?
It's a Maltese Cairn Terrier.
Oh, it's very cute.
So like Toto from the Wizard of Oz.
Like if you told me like like, hey Rob, like I'm starting a new podcast, I think it's gonna be like, well, Grace, you know what? Well, I don't think it's gonna be the greatest podcast because you know what? I already have the greatest podcast. So
Yeah, but actually, your wife took the.
sorry for
podcast from
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah, but
not great.
you know, my wife and I, well, let's just say she has a good lawyer, and I don't have it anymore.
Yeah, a little, yeah, subtle way of trying to brag about the cuteness of his dog. I think, we haven't seen much of Claire. I really do. I think I like Claire a bit, but she seems to take it pretty well. I was like, oh, that sounds like a cute dog. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you have the cutest dog in the world.
Yeah. Also, yeah, and I know nothing of Matt Blankenship's ex. I'm Team Blankenship.
Yeah,
Let
same.
him get joint custody of the dog, you
Yeah, come
monster.
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Let him
It's
see the
sad.
cute dog.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
see this man? He's heartbroken.
Mm-hmm.
Let him have a play date. Let him
Well,
go to the dog park.
Seems
Want
like
to
he
meet your
wants
new
to.
doggy mommy, Franny?
Yeah, he's having play dates with Franny. Are we
You see
blank
how
and
good he is
chipping?
with a stick bug, Grace?
Are we blank and
This man-
chipping Matt and Franny? Is that what are we doing it?
Sure,
Yeah.
of course
Yeah.
we are. But Grace, he's a good bug dad, let alone a dog dad.
I know
How
you
could
might
you
have the
take-
cutest stick bug, but actually I have the cutest stick bug in the world. Yeah.
Okay. I want to circle back to Matt and Franny, but
Yes.
let me just anything else and as far as all of this Tika business is concerned. Well, one other thing that Shannon said that I thought was super interesting. She said that why did the episode make it that Carson is the swing vote? And in reality, isn't Jam the swing vote here? I mean, isn't Jam the person who's ultimately deciding like which way this thing went?
Yeah. Yes, I think so, because if Jam votes one way, it's 2-2, and if he votes the other way, it's 3-1. So I think yes, exactly right. He is the swing vote. Oh, we have not talked about. I did absolutely love one of my favorite Carolyn moments. Just to circle back to Carolyn. Carson comes and says, "I want to work with you. I want you in my life," is what he says. And Carolyn faints. She fake faints. She lies down. And then she, I think, realizes, like her son told her, don't be weird. I think she realizes she's being a tad weird by fake fainting on the ground. She goes, I'm not normal. She says, not normal. And then she stands up. And then in a confessional, she goes, this is my favorite Carolyn line of the episode. I think she goes, so I don't know why Carson is smart. I'm smart too. She pauses because she realizes that she said somebody else is smart. She wants to make sure I'm smart too, but I'm not sure why this is in Carson's best interest to work with us. It's just Carolyn, an absolute delight. Not normal. I love her reminding herself this is not normal behavior. You should stand up and act normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like, look, that none of us are normal.
Well,
and,
Marianne said a few seasons ago, right? Like she's out
she
there. To play for the
famously was doing it for the
so-
weirdos, and now and she paved the way here for Carolyn. Yeah. When Carson comes to her and says, "I want to work with you," she's a little bit like, "Why? Like, I don't understand.
I want you in my life." Is Carson seemingly committing to more than a Survivor alliance?
But that being said, like if Carolyn doesn't know that Sarah has lost her vote, like it may make less. It might be like many of us viewers who are like, "Yeah, why? Why are you doing this, Carson? Like, aren't you in a 3-person alliance?"
Yeah.
So it certainly could be shocking to Carolyn to not know that information.
So I definitely agree. I feel like this is probably some foreshadowing for Carson's role in the game moving forward. That I do feel like, yes, Jam is the swing vote, but potentially if he's much more locked in, right? Like if he's not giving confessionals about ever potentially voting out Carolyn, then he's not, So I mean, really, is there a swing vote? I think maybe not really, in this vote. So yeah, it makes me think that they really want to set up Jam and Carolyn as a pair, with
Yes.
Carson potentially as the third to that pair and deciding to join
Yeah.
with them, which probably I think is foreshadowing for what Carson's game might look like
Yeah.
in the future.
They gave Carson some agency in the episode. I think the truth was that this vote was decided once Jam decides that he is working with Carolyn.
Agreed.
Because that at that point, Carson has but no other choice to ultimately go with them.
Yeah, maybe Jam is less a swing vote and more of like, I don't know what metaphor to call, but like he piece it. This is what I'm doing, and the vote really can't go any other way, right? He just like is so rock steady there. Yeah.
Yes, and he said this about him and Carolyn.
Helen and I, we're all crazy people.
Yeah, and as an old crazy person, I relatable.
Yeah. What
rooting for them?
The episode title, what was it? It was
Two Dorky Magnets.
Two Dorky Magnets. That's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why, do you think it was a double meaning? Do you think that meant that was Jam and Carolyn also?
I think maybe it could be. Yeah. Aren't they kind of they're kind of dorky magnets,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we talk about a little bit more about the titular dorky magnets, Matt and Franny? You said you're blanking shipping them. You're on board. We did the 100% approval rating bracket on RHAP this weekend. Maybe Matt and Franny should have been a late submission. Akiva would not have known who they are, but we could have had them in the bracket.
It's kind of fun. Love stories are so rare on Survivor. I know you talked about your experience with the showmance on Survivor, but so it's very rare that we get one actually on the show, like on the island, right? Like there's been relationships between people after the show, but not on the show. So it's kind of cute. It's fun. I don't mind it. And I think I think Gabby made a really good point about this idea of, once you become two in a tribe of 6, that becomes really powerful. It feels like it could put a big target on your back, but that's 2 votes you have to sway. It's like 3 other votes you have to sway to convince them to vote out one of the 2. And that's really powerful, I think, in this. I think not super great for them long term, but in the early game, I don't think it's that bad.
Okay, let me start off with a strategy question about them. This comes to us from Natalie, who says, do Franny and Matt have the right idea to make themselves seem like less of a pair, or is the whole tribe has picked up on the vibes? Should they just roll with it? Should they be approaching people for alliances with the selling point that the others will follow whatever they want to do? Or does Matt having no vote mess this pitch up too much? So it's sort of like they kind of have the worst of both worlds, Grace, where they have sort of the threat level of a couple, but in practice, in reality, they don't have the 2 votes that you would associate with a couple.
Yes, that is tricky. Do they have shared custody of the vote?
They have shared custody of the vote. No, Franny won't even give it to him.
Yeah.
Like, I had your vote is
I had
nice,
the cutest vote in the
world. The cutest vote taken from me against my will.
Yeah.
So
I think that there's something really. So I feel like we have seen some pretty formidable pairs, some pretty good duos over the last few seasons of Survivor. You think of like Shannon Ricard. If
only last night was the MTV Movie Awards, or best on-screen duo.
That's right. I think that the tricky thing, and again, we're like sort of like in somewhat uncharted territories in terms of people who seem to be maybe romantically interested in each other, in terms of how much would they be willing to turn on each other? Because I think the thing about a duo that actually, while it does feel a bit, daunting, it's a big target. The other piece is like, only one person can win. So like, what if, they got to turn on each other eventually. And we've really seen that over the course. We've seen a lot of these duos who don't make it to the end together because you got to take out the other one. And it was a big story point of Shannon Ricard, right? Of like, if we both go to the end together, I don't know that either one of them didn't think that they would have the argument. So you got to take them out. But then they're sort of romantically maybe interested in each other, at least flirting. And does that feel like, that's maybe a little harder to break up than your normal duo?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a pretty interesting question. And this was something that Bryce and Wendell were talking about on the Purple Pants podcast about Bryce had asked, like, what's the difference between, a showmance and a duo? And they went back to talking about Wendell with Dominic. And, they were a very tight pair. But ultimately, a tight pair that was going to kind of go like heads up at the end. They were sort of like forced into a situation where they had to go to the end with each other. But I think that they would have, like, if like push came to shove, I think gone their separate ways before getting to the final three. If there was a way for one of them to go there, say at the final, like I think Dom will say to this day, I wish I would have taken on Wendell in the fire making. I wish I would have thought of that. It was not like, hey, Wendell and I promised each other we will sit next to each other at the end of the game. Whereas a romantic duo, we've seen this a few times in Big Brother, Grace, where at the very end of the game.
Well, this is where it comes up because, previously you just make sure you don't put up your romantic interest on the block. So it's at the end of the game, it gets tricky.
Has a showmantic couple, and chat, please jump in here with us, okay? Mm-hmm. Has a showmantic couple ever turned on each other before like the jury ends up weighing in? I think that maybe there have been like one-sided relationships where it's like, hey, like a guy was leading a girl along, a girl was leading a guy along. But in terms of like an actual showmance, has that ever happened before the very, very like end stage of the game?
Yeah, I don't know about not the end stage of the game. I'm trying to think. I know there's a very famous sort of like vote out in Big Brother Canada 3, I believe, which is the John Netta, but that's the final three.
Canada 2. Yeah. And that was at the very end, and it's happened in with US Big Brother. But I really feel like that while showmances have been broken up, for a person in a showmance to turn on that other person, I don't think it's ever happened. And so I do think that there is some safety there, and maybe a higher threat level.
What happened in Love Goggle season? What season is that?
Well, that was Figgy and Taylor, but they were not that small tribe. It was Adam, Jessica, and Ken. I think blindsided, like Adam was the swing boat, and he blindsided Figgy.
Right. So
it wasn't Taylor turning on Figgy.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think, a real romantic interest. I don't think so. I can't think of it.
So that's the tightest bond I think that you can have in one of these games. And I think that does make that very dangerous. There is almost no chance that they are going to turn on each other, even in Micronesia, where, Ozzy got voted out. Amanda got left out of the vote. Amanda, Suri and Parvati, and they all did that without telling Amanda because they were worried that what Amanda would tell him.
Yeah, but I also think very interesting because there's such a small sample size of these romantic interests. Like, I think in the modern game, I think that there could be this interesting dilemma that one of them has about if the other one is playing a little bit of a better game, and how much are they willing to go to the end with them, or do they think they need to make a move? And then the potential backlash of doing that as well, of like, you want to talk about a bitter jury. If you feel like you got betrayed by someone, not only that is just your, in an alliance with, but someone you've like had romantic feelings for, and have been reciprocated, I think is the important thing. Because I know like we've had Matt express this. We have not necessarily had Franny fully, I think, say this is something she's 100% interested in pursuing. So I feel like some of this is a little bit hypothetical at the moment, but I do think like, if she decided, it is in my best interest to get ready to win $1 million. Like I'll only have this chance once and hope that, it might be okay with Matt. I think that could be a tricky situation to navigate.
Let me bring in an important distinction. Also, Paul in the chat points out with John and Netta on BB Can, they didn't get together until after the season. That is fair. That there had been like flirtations, but they were they were not a showmance in Big Brother Canada 2. They got together after the season was over. That we thought they were just friends in Big Brother Canada 2 with friends with the final 2 deal. Before he ultimately cut her. So that's not even like a clear example of that happening. So these showmances, the heart ties are hard to break, Grace.
Very hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. We have seen a little bit of the courtship of Matt and Franny and vice versa in this episode. And we got to see a little bit of their relationship come together. Here's just a little bit of their playful banter.
Now I'm changing the metaphor. You're a little fishy. Got my big long rod. I don't usually make a habit of talking about my big long rod, but
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, changing the metaphor. Let's talk about his big long rod. Who's big long rod? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so Matt, is like she's laughing. I mean,
She does the old snort laugh, actually, which I thought was pretty cute.
and he loves that. He thinks it's adorable. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, we got to see Claire's reactions to all of this throughout the episode. Had some great, as Maggie called it, stank face to all of this throughout the episode.
Are you serious? Like, what are they doing?
She can't believe it. Where do you think Claire is in all of this? I mean, that Claire is a little bit like the Stadler and Waldorf here of the new era reacting to all of this. Do you think is Claire somebody who is a sort of like unwilling participant in this alliance, or do you feel like that is the story sort of like sowing the seeds that maybe that Claire could potentially be looking for a place in this game elsewhere?
No, because I mean the only thing is whether we get this the impression that Danny is mostly off doing his own thing. That's what the show shows us. He obviously does find the idol, but there's a scene where all of them are like, I wonder where Danny is. I do love Claire calling herself Chief Laziness Officer.
Yes. Not Chief Laziness Officer, Grace. Get it straight.
I'm the Chief Laziness Czar.
Czar.
Oh, I missed that. Czar. Wow. Forgive me, Claire. So then you kind of, I guess, like in that group, you have Heidi and you have Josh. Josh has been really not on the show. So I, I feel bad for him. So I think the thing is
sorry
like,
for you.
Sorry for you. I think that, is Claire looking potentially, is the move to try to loop in Heidi and Josh to make sure that if you need to vote out Danny, which might be tricky because he has an idol, do you sort of coach yourself to make sure you have 3 out of the 5 who's remaining if you're really worried about Franny and Matt's connection.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The tribe hasn't gone to the tribe has not lost. So there's like very little from this tribe.
The tribe has not lost. And of course, that has also been no help from Claire. She had the moment in the episode with Jeff, sort of like an interesting back and forth with her and Jeff. Let me get your reaction to this, Grace. Okay.
Claire going to sit out again. Is that a volunteer or is that a tribe decision?
Both?
This is very interesting. So old school Survivor, we have a reward and immunity challenge. Can't sit out back-to-back episodes, but they clarify this eventually at some point that it's a cycle. So it's the cycle in which you can't sit out back-to-back episodes. Should they change this? Should they change this to be you can't sit out back-to-back challenges no matter what order they're in? I don't know. Fairness? I don't know. Does it matter? You win. That's the advantage you get from winning, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think it matters so much. Like, I feel like that for Soka, I feel like that they're in a good position. I mean, I think there might be something where that they might want to have Claire in there, if for whatever reason, like, I don't know if it's not like that Claire is like somebody who is just like a pile of goo, like Chet once upon a time, who cannot like do anything in a challenge. They don't want to put her in the challenge. Like, what's the difference if they sit out Claire or Heidi?
No, I don't really know. I'm just I'm positing a question, but I think it would. I feel like the show has become I think the challenges have enough variety and whatnot that doesn't matter as much. Like, you there might be a reason to sub in choose Claire over another member of the tribe depending on the challenge. And also I think like there was an era where we had like these really huge and it's like really physical challenges where like it was such an advantage, I think, to like be on like to have strength in numbers so you could sit out your weakest members, that I don't think that like they don't do a lot of that, to say Australian Survivor loves a really physical challenge. Survivor has moved away from that. I can't even remember anything other than sort of the Winners at War premiere that we've had, like, where they're like actually fighting.
It has not happened much in the new era for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Grace, so we're talking about Claire, who's been a very fun character on the show. And really, I kind of feel like that we have been blessed in this season. We have Tika Tribe, which is a whole mood. And then we have the Soka Tribe. And I think they've been sort of like an underrated fun group. So Claire got me thinking. Okay. Let me bring in a tweet that Claire had. This is still the Mike Bloom tweet. Let me bring in this tweet from Claire, who she and I have something in common. Both big fans of the Chat GPT. Okay.
Yes.
And yes, this is what Claire had to say. Okay. Well, let me read you. She said, "Has started using Chat GPT to draft Hunger Games fan fictions. The 44th Hunger Games were lit."
Claire, does Claire know about the Brant Steele Hunger Games? Does she know there is that? There is a Brant Steele Hunger Games. I don't know if she is aware of this, but I might need to message.
Okay, so all right, we love the Chat GPT. Okay,
yeah,
and then also we got a secret scene this week. Did you happen to see the Soka secret scene, Grace?
I did not see it. Canada is a little hit and miss with our secret scenes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, let me just tell you what was going on.
Okay.
We have I call them digital dailies of the survivor moments. Okay.
Yeah.
And so basically it was about the Soka tribe. They lost the machete. It was the Soka tribe, and they are looking for the machete, and they can't find it. They said, like, what a fun group this is. You've got Matt and Franny and Claire and Heidi, of course, not to mention Danny, who we'll talk about, who is emerging as a character.
Yep.
And then there's Josh. And I was thinking, Grace,
Josh. Yeah,
boy, this Soka tribe might be a great muse for TV's next great situational comedy.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
Now, okay. First of all, what's the name of it?
Yes. Soka. So complicated. Soka it in. Right?
Soka it in.
I was so complicated, but that's, I think, Soka it in.
Yeah. Where's Avril Lavigne when you need her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So let me give you. So I programmed this all into Chat GPT. Okay, and I asked it to come up with an episode of the Soka Show.
Amazing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so here we go. All right. Matt and Franny were preparing for their upcoming camping trip over breakfast. They needed a machete, but they couldn't find it. Franny suggested asking Claire, but she was still asleep. Just then, Danny bursts into the kitchen with his usual energy. That's like the Kramer entrance, right?
Yeah.
Knocking over a stack of plates. The group looked at him disapprovingly, but Danny was too excited to notice. Heidi walked in and immediately noticed the broken plates, asking what happened. Danny tried to explain, but he was too excited. He couldn't stay on topic. Heidi then asked if they had seen the machete, but Matt and Franny had no idea where it was. Josh, the mysterious neighbor, appeared, but he remained silent as usual. Okay, go to commercial. That's Act 1.
That's good. Okay? Yeah.
As the group searched for the missing machete, Matt and Franny found themselves alone in the bathroom. There was a moment of awkward silence before they started discussing their feelings for each other. Meanwhile, Claire was in the living room making faces at their conversation. Danny suggested they retrace their steps, and they all agreed to search the apartment again. But while they were searching, Claire woke up and asked what was going on. Matt and Franny told her they were looking for the machete and they hadn't seen it. Just as they were about to give in, Heidi walked in with the missing machete, which she found in the couch cushions. The group was relieved but confused how it ended up there. Yeah, that was, she saved somebody's life, Grace.
Yeah, in the couch.
That would not have been funny. Machete in the couch cushions.
That's why Suri, I think, got up off the couch because there was
get up off the couch with a machete, Suri. That's how she became a traitor, I think.
That's right.
As the group prepared for their camping trip, Danny was excited to show off his latest invention. And Claire, I love that. Is Danny an inventor?
I guess so. He's a firefighter, right? I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
he's an inventor. Yeah, sure.
And Claire is making faces at Matt and Franny's conversation. Josh appeared again, and he handed them the machete, claiming he found it in the hallway.
Whoa.
The group was even more confused, but they decided to take it and leave. And as they were leaving, Matt and Franny exchanged a smile, and the audience wondered if they would ever get together.
Wow.
Suddenly, Claire noticed that Josh had a machete on his belt and asked him if it was theirs. Josh responded cryptically, "No, it's mine," and disappeared before they could ask any further questions. All right, last act, Grace.
Okay, I'm with you.
As the group drove to their camping destination, Danny was still excited talking about his invention. Claire was dozing off in the back seat, and Heidi was navigating. Suddenly, they heard a thud and realized that they had forgotten their tent poles.
A big long rod that you need.
Yes. You need
a big long rod.
Yeah. They forgot their tent poles. And so they decided to turn back. And just as they were about to head back, Josh appeared on the side of the road holding the tent poles. The group was baffled, but relieved and thanked him for his help. Josh responded with a cryptic smile, leaving the group wondering who he really was and why he kept showing up. Is that a great show or what?
That's great. That's great. I mean, it really nailed it. Yeah, Claire is sort of like the sassy sidekick. Danny being basically the Kramer, his love interest. Josh being a man of mystery. Is there 3 machetes in the machete story? There's 3 machetes.
Oh no! Why? Maybe 2 of them were fake machetes, Grace. You didn't think about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Great.
The B&B did a great job this week, really profiling the character that is Danny and all of the hijinks that he brought to this week's episode, which I do think sort of were overshadowed by everything going on with Carolyn. Maybe in another universe where there was no Carolyn and the Birdcage, we'd be talking more about Danny, who had some really great moments. We got the whole Matt and Franny storyline. That's the A story of the Soka tribe. But the B storyline is crazy Danny out on a bunch of adventures looking for the key. Danny, he can't sit still. Okay. Danny, he's like so many of us.
I'm always doing something. And when I'm doing something, I'm also doing something else.
Yeah.
That is very relatable. I talk about that. I'm trying to watch a show with subtitles. I can't do it because I can only be watching the show. I have trouble reading because it's I'm only doing one thing. I got to be doing 2 things at one time, which I know is fake. Multitasking is not real. You're only ever doing one thing at one time. But
yeah. But Grace, I do feel like what is interesting about what we do here, very hard to multitask in podcast. I mean, Akiva will do it, but for the rest of us, that's why we have so many great podcasts.
Yeah. Singularly focused, Yeah. It's great. Yeah. Sometimes you got to do a little research or something.
Sometimes, you're Google on the side or whatnot, or read that chat we have now. But for the most part, you got to be focused on what you're doing here. And so Danny, he's out there. He's looking for the hidden immunity idol, and he says this:
I don't know the best way to find an idol, but I know the worst way, and that's not looking.
Yeah,
that's some real.
That's wise.
That's some good wise advice. Yeah, I can't believe it's never been said before. It's very clever. I don't know if it's said. I met Danny in Toronto. He came.
Oh, how was that?
He is just lovely. I hung out with him at karaoke. He's a delight. I met his sister and his baby. He's great. He is my winner pick because he's the first time I've ever met the day before they went on the show. So I picked him as my winner pick. He's great. I'm really rooting for Danny. He was so nice. He does breathing exercises as well. He's I think he's very well. I don't love that he's the only one not at camp. But I do think he has he feels to me a bit in the he's gonna go idle hunt, very Ben Drebergen-esque, and I don't mean just work ethic wise. I think for now, in terms of he's I think that the same way that Kane was I'll go play. I'm gonna go look for the idol. And edits are tricky. Kane gets called out for being like, looking in the crab tree. But Danny, they're like, guy's probably doing palm fronts, right? He's probably working. He's probably not looking for an idol.
Yeah.
And yet
And
he fully finds the idol.
Claire runs cover for him. That clip we played about her being the laziness czar. She's like, we don't have to follow him.
That's
like,
right.
I'm giving permission for us to be lazy. We could just sit here and not do anything. So that's fine.
Interesting. Do you think that there's something there? Is, Matt also says, like, Matt's the one who says, like, he's probably doing palm runs. Is there anything? Is Danny's position in the tribe actually better than we're making? Like,
I don't know. I don't know where it is, Greg.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting question, because that I was like thinking about this group and this soak it in, that like, is Danny an odd man out, or is he part of the group? Like, is the B story going to merge with the A story, or is it just that, okay, well, all right, Josh is the person who isn't fitting in for whatever reason, or that they're just not going to go to a pre-merge tribal council, because he seems so separate from what the rest of the tribe is doing, but he's being painted, I think, in a flattering way, which I don't want to get like lost in the sauce on the edit reading, but I kind of feel like that he is not being painted as somebody who it seems like that the target is going on him.
Yeah, I think the only other, I don't love edit reading, but it's almost like once you start to see it, you can't turn it off. It's like your brain, you can't help but think about it. Because the other reading, which is the less charitable reading to Danny's getting a good edit, is that he has an idol and he potentially has some sort of memorable moment that, like, you want to build him up before he has some moment, even if it's not exactly, he's not in and he's out, an underdog-ish moment. The tribe seems pretty well intact to maybe make it to the merge without going to a tribal council. And I also think, I think that the strength thing is real. It comes up in the tribal council this week with Tika, where they say, yeah, I think Bruce was our strongest tribe member. So we actually are kind of thinking about tribe strength still, which feels like it certainly doesn't have the same emphasis it had many seasons ago. But I do still think it is important in these small tribes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Danny had another great moment in the episode after he finds the hidden immunity idol.
I can't wait to tell everyone. Oh, wait. No, I'm not. I'm not going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
Very funny. He has a line too about leaving the house for work, but in this case, you leave the shelter. I think he's a very charming individual on our show. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see where Danny ultimately goes with all of this. Okay. Let's go back to talking about something from earlier in the show, Grace. And so let me bring in a voicemail that comes to us from one of our listeners. Ben has a question for you. Okay, here is Ben. Take two on Ben.
Hey, Rob and Grace. This is Ben from Toronto calling. So it was time to get out of my comfort zone. I dared to take the plunge, and I officially listened to the second episode of On Fire with Jeff Probst, which was interesting and also extremely weird. And the oddest part was in the Why Jeff Sucks section. He responded to criticism of knowledge is power by defending it and saying that he loves knowledge is power so much that if Jeff were to get any tattoo of Survivor on his butt, it would be the letters KIP for knowledge is power.
Okay.
So would love to hear your reactions to this. And more importantly, Robin Grace, what would be your Survivor tattoo that you would get on your butt?
All right.
Can't
wow.
wait to hear.
Okay. All right. Well, let me play the clip so we make sure that can't be right. That there's no way that Jeff Probst said that, Ben. Okay. So, can you at least get your facts straight before you call into the podcast? Because I don't think that that's something that was actually said. Let's play the clip.
Okay.
For an edge of extinction and all the other dumb things we've done.
Great idea.
But I'm going to take exception right here. Knowledge is power. That's where this argument starts to take on some water, because knowledge is power is not a questionable advantage. I do not agree. I object. Sustain. Knowledge is power is pure beauty. It's magnificent. I mean, we're only 3 seasons in and it's already led to some truly great moments. If I was going to get a Survivor tattoo, I think it would be the letters KIP on my butt. All right, next week on Fire with Jeff.
I guess he did say it. Okay. If I was going to get a Survivor tattoo,
yeah,
I guess it would. Now, it was not even volunteered, Grace.
No,
like, Jeff, if you had to get any Survivor tattoo on your butt, what would it be? Like, well, I guess I do like knowledge is power. He volunteered.
Yeah.
Hold on, Jeff. Were you volunteered or were you told to get that tattoo?
I just got, if I had to. He says if I had to, I'd get it on my butt. KIP.
Huh.
Not knowledge is power. KIP. KIP. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which feels, I mean, maybe just get the whole thing because you have to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right.
What is that on your butt?
Jessica Lees, maybe that's a next podcast inspired tattoo idea.
And perhaps. I was thinking about, thanks Ben for asking which one. Ben from Toronto. Shout out to Toronto. Dig Deep would be interesting. I don't know that I'm going to get that one.
Yeah. All right. But first off, like, Grace, before we get to our personal tattoo.
Okay. All right.
Jeff Probst loves knowledge is power so much. He says it is magnificent.
Do you know what?
Good sign or bad sign for Survivor?
No, I actually agree. I actually really like Knowledge Power. And I was not a huge fan of Knowledge Power the very first time it got played. I think they got very lucky in the way somebody found out that Knowledge Power was in the game and was able to move their idol, and it created a very fun moment. Now that people know that Knowledge is Power in the game, I do think Jeff is right that it does it does create, it changes the way people are going to play. I mean, the argument for, so, we want people to play smart. I don't know. I guess I don't know what we want, because I think the thing about knowledge is power. The only thing you could say that's not great about it just looming over everything, and really looms large, I believe, last season. Or maybe the season before, I can't remember, is that, does it cause people to be, this is Taryn's big thing with Big Brother twists, is that the more you don't know what's happening, the more you're likely to stick to your plan, to not take big risks. So does this lead people, the right strategy is to not tell anybody about your advantages, about your idols, whatever. But there is such a fun history of these things being used, when somebody finds out, using it for leverage, as to lure in an ally or to fend off a potential vote coming your way. So does it cause there to be less actually strategic things happening out there? I mean, people might play a little bit more like in their best interest, but is that actually what we want? We don't want everybody to play perfectly, right? Because if everybody play perfectly, that's pretty boring. I think we want, there to be some mistakes. I think sometimes telling someone is a mistake, but it can be fun television.
Yeah, I think we do want everybody to play perfectly and then have there be some mistakes, but we do want everybody to kind of know what game it is that they are playing. I think that, and maybe
that's
knowledge
true.
is power has been saved because of what you're saying, that everybody knows about it. But
yeah,
when Jeff says that knowledge is power is magnificent, it's that I think that they are not content to say, okay, well, now everybody knows knowledge is power is a real thing. I think that their mindset is, what's the next knowledge is power? What if there's, you could, like, what is the next, like, Deus Ex Machina that we can bring into the game that they'll never see coming? But imagine their reaction when it happens. That'll be good.
I often think
you'll never believe that one.
I do often think that, like, the best, the way we see advantages get played, it's often like the second time they're around in the game is when I feel like it's almost like it's more fair to the players. It's a little bit more fun. People can, like, try to figure out how to play around it in a way that becomes really enticing. But Survivor will never be, Jeff will never be complacent with, like, all right, well, that's enough things. And I actually thought, when they came back in 41 and they talked about, okay, now we have, and then 42, they're like, we did it once, now we're going to do it the same way again. We're going to see how it works. But then, like, even that, they, like, changed the way they did things, and we didn't really get this, like, continuation of, like, okay, this is a thing that's in the game now, and we'll see, to the point of, like, I don't think we need the, like, say the phrases. I don't think it would actually work. And that's why I thought like the Birdcage was interesting, but you know, the Birdcage feels like you can only do it. You know, do you think that becomes standard fare in terms of idol find? I don't think so. I think this is probably a one and done, or at least two and done. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see, but just make no mistake, Jeff loves knowledge is power. We'll see. It's going to come back this season. Actually, Grace, could I play something else for you from the Jeff Probst podcast? And hopefully I will have it correct in my notes. But there was something else that Jeff said. Let me see. Let me do this. I'm doing this kind of like on the fly and from memory. So let me see if I get this right.
Only saying that every season when we sit down to do it, we look at where we've been and we look at where we want to go and we decide, do we need to add something here? Should we throw another flavor in, another ingredient into the mix and see what happens? That's really all we're doing. And then we turn it over to the players and they evolve it.
Yeah, like Russell Hantz when he found that idol without a clue.
Nobody had ever done that before.
Yeah.
I remember hearing the call on the radio. Hans found an idol, and I think I said, "Oh, so we found the clue," and they said, "Nope, didn't find the clue." And I remember Russell again. This sounds obvious,
think
but
I'm a little
Russell
early.
did something no one had done. Game is now the Tony approach and every other player. That was Russell Hantz. It wasn't us.
And what about when Yao Man created that?
Yeah, and then Ozzy came in.
Right.
This season gives you the tools of a fake idol. You can trace that origin back to Yao Man and Ozzy. Organic evolution. You don't know it at the time, but these are seeds that are going to blossom somewhere down the road.
Right. And other than like looking at past scenarios, are there any other ways that you come up with advantages nowadays?
Well, like I want to always say, I don't come up with all the ideas, so I can only speak to my process, but I wish there was a book you could open called Secret Advantages to Use in an Unscripted Show. But I just do the same things we kind of talked about last week, only more specific. Like I'll,
you know, Grace, I cannot find the exact clip that I was looking for. My bad, trying to produce this on the fly. That's live podcasting. Jeff said that there's going to be something with the vote that they're going to do this season that we've never seen before. A new thing
with the vote. With the vote. You have any idea what this could be? I have no idea.
No, I have no idea. I'm only terrified.
Yeah. I mean, so that feels like potentially the spot where they did, is it do or die? What is it called? What is the event?
Do or die?
Yeah. Do or die. It feels like maybe they want something in that spot instead. I know that one didn't get, I know he's like joked that the hourglass is not coming back. Right. But has he talked about do or die? It feels like there could be something in that spot where they might, there's something in like sort of the mid jury phase that sort of is an unconventional vote. That feels like where that could be the spot. That's where I would like, if they're going to do something with the vote, that's where I would think that they might put it. Or the first merge vote is a place that they've sort of decided to do. You know, that's where they had the hourglass twist. Potentially it's there as well.
Okay, Grace, I want to ask you one thing about the Ratu tribe. Okay. And I want to talk about Matthew. Okay. Fonzo says Matthew is giving villain edit, right? Or am I tripping? So is Fonzo tripping?
Well, you know, there's a very interesting moment, I thought, that this episode where Matthew reveals that he has this, he's rebuilt this puzzle.
Can I play the clip?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Here we go. Here is Matthew after he wins the challenge.
Where does that decision come from? Because this is a win it or lose it spot.
I asked my tribe to trust in me, and I went against the doctor's orders and took my arm out of my sling because I knew I could do this. I built one of these in my backyard, and I practiced on this many, many times.
Really?
Yes, sir.
So you built a replica?
Out of plywood, yeah. I've been preparing for this for a while.
Well, it paid off. Nice job. That is dedication. In addition,
so all right, let's talk about that. I just do want to just throw out there then when they got back to the tribe. The Tika tribe was talking some smack about Matthew.
Yes,
How are you supposed to be the guy who has one of these built in his backyard, you know?
Oh my god.
That's ridiculous. I mean, like, there's really no.
His car's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. I can't believe this guy would be building puzzles.
Yeah, I wanted to. Gabby was saying doesn't know anybody who has a real 3D printer. I have 2 friends who have 3D printers.
Oh, I was just impressed that you have 2 friends, Grace, because that's more than me.
I know. I don't think they're using them to build survivor puzzles, but yeah, I do like them talking smack about this move because it feels like a kind of a genuine moment with Jeff. No way Jeff doesn't. He knows that people are playing the survivor puzzles at home, right? He's got to know. But anyway,
that's interesting that you feel like that Jeff was sort of had known Matthew has this puzzle in his backyard.
Yeah, it's the same. He did all the
I guess
it's the same as episode 1 when he's like, you in the back with the Hawaiian shirt. Like, what's your name? It's like you've interviewed this person a million times. It was the exact same.
You know, I feel like that Matthew is the type of guy that he can't help but tell you that he has the snake plywood puzzle in his backyard.
100%. I mean, villain edit. I don't know if I see villain edit. I do think he's somebody who I think will play a little bit cutthroat. I think that he plays a shot in the dark last week, and I feel like that's, you know, basically to make sure he has no, you know, blood on his hands. He doesn't show his cards. I think he's definitely somebody who's willing he'll take a shot, I think. But I think there's a lot of people like that in the modern day. I don't know that he reads villain to me.
No, Grace, I think that Fonzo is right. And I know that back on Post Show Recaps, you and the aforementioned Jessica Lees at one point, you were going through all of the Bond movies, right?
We selectively picked a few.
Pick some Bond. Yeah. And so I think that Matthew, I think has some great like Bond villain qualities. First off, you know, great hair, great beard. I think that so that's perfect. He's also, I think, a good like monologuer, and I think that like the like classic trope of a villain is that they basically like they say too much about their plan. And I think that he like a couple of times here has like even the start of this episode, like he's doing too much and telling us about like how great these like evil plans are working between the shot in the dark. Everything went perfect. I didn't have to play my vote, and this was great. And this about like, yes, Jeff, absolutely. You see, I prepared this whole time in my backyard building this exact puzzle out of. I defied the doctor's orders to compete and do this. And so I think he's just like I think I love having him on the season. I love having people that are gonna think outside the box like this. But I do think that, you know, there is a little bit of just like mustache twirliness to him, and he can't help but tell us about it.
I think there's some insight into Matt that I might be able to provide, which is as an LGBTQ person, which is, you know, Matt's not older. He's 43, I believe. He's 43.
Later days. Yeah.
I don't mean to say old. I really didn't mean to say old. I mean, you know, from Survivor standpoint. And I think that there is this thing when you're an LGBTQ person, there's so much of your life you conform to what society thinks and you know, there's a way in which you don't have confidence, and that when you come out, even that can be hard to have confidence. And then you can sort of enter this world that like, it's not easy for people to be LGBTQ on Survivor. Like we saw, you know, I love the stuff that we got between Romeo and High a few seasons ago, but like, you know, he's still worried about coming out. But there's this way in which, and I actually think LGBTQ people can be really good at Survivor. And I think that like, that's, you know, not every LGBTQ person is going to be good at Survivor, but there's a way in which you sort of have to like adapt to what society expects of you as like, you know, what you think, you know, you should be, and that we're a very like heteronormative society. And so you are good at adapting and like switching, you know, in different conversations. But I think there's also this like, there is this like thrill, I think probably from of like being able to be in a situation where like something he's like really good at and can be confident about, that I think is like seeping through a little bit in terms of like the way he is willing to potentially monologue, because it's like it is this thing where like, yeah, LGBT, there are challenges. Obviously there's other groups of people who have challenges in life as well, but there is this way in which like you can butt up against that in society. And in this game where like, you know, okay, we're just going to play this game, I'm really good at this game. I think he's like extremely confident. I think that that's totally fair, and I think that like I am seeing cracks in his game that I was very excited to see him play, but I think that that might be coming through. That it's like this, it's like overexcited about the potential that he could have in this game, and it's maybe like affecting his monologuing, saying that he built the puzzle in his backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grace, well, thank you for all of that additional information. That it's great to get that perspective. I think that Matthew's actually in a very good position moving forward. It does feel like that he is the leader of the Ratu tribe. I just wonder if this tribe is ultimately going to be doomed. Like, I feel like that if I'm going to just sort of like, we're only 3 hours into the season and 2 episodes in, maybe he emerges as the leader of this tribe that ultimately, not the Grace leader, the leader of this tribe that ultimately we're going to see like the personalities from Tika and from Soka like come together and like knock this group out at the merge.
I don't love Matthew's position actually, because I don't I think the worst place you can be in Survivor in the new era is to be seen as the leader of this group. He does have the moment where like Kane is looking for the idol, and he's like, and he finds the crab. He's like, that's not where not where firewood is, right? He's like clearly looking in hidey holes. I think that's good. I think he certainly has a bunch, but I think to your point, if the other tribes come together to look at Matthew, I think he's a very clear early target, which is like surprising because like Brandon's the one who plays an idol. I think Kane is probably the most seems to be on the outs of that tribe because he's cast the one vote for Brandon. But I actually don't really love Matthew's position. I feel like you always talk about in Big Brother, you got to go to sleep for the first half of the game. I don't think you need to go to sleep.
That's what Claire wants to do.
That's right. I feel like you want to be the deputy, not the sheriff. Is this a metaphor? I don't know. You don't want to be number one. That's the worst place to be, I think.
Yeah, if I had to sort of just like Brant Steele how the rest of the season is going to do it, I know you do a lot of Brant Steele's, Grace, that I feel like that maybe like we might see like, okay, Sarah go out here from Tika, and maybe Soka loses a person, or we lose like another person from Ratu before we get to the merge. But then I feel like that the Tika like personality fits, I feel like blend better with some of like the colorful personalities from Soka, as opposed to the Ratu tribe, which it's not really the fun tribe yet.
Not yet. But
Lauren seems she could be fun.
Yeah.
Jamie seems like she has a wacky upside. Kane, he's kind of like down in the dumps.
It's the one Canadian. But Canadian, I do think I can see like Carolyn and Jam like with Matt and Franny. Like I can kind of see. I think I agree with you. I see that more likely than potentially the other tribes coming together. Yeah.
Then pairing up with like Matt and Brandon at the merge.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Okay. Grace, let's see. Anything else from season 44 that you want to make sure we touch on here today on the feedback show?
No, I think you got through everything. One thing that was very interesting is I noticed that Carson says to Carolyn, she says, why would you vote? Why would you vote with me? And he says, have you ever seen an easy vote happen in Survivor? And is it in episode 1 that Jeff says this to the tribe? He says there's never been an easy vote in Survivor. And so I was like, oh, the shared language is happening. But that makes no sense, because how would Carson ever have heard Jeff Probst say, is there ever an easy vote? He was not at that tribal council. How did this happen? He says, everybody's saying, have you ever seen an easy vote happen in Survivor?
What I have found from, listening to a lot of Jeff Probst's media, I feel like he tends to say the same things a lot. So I think that he might have just been like repeating that a lot to the survivors in pregame. Like, hey, remember, there's no such thing as an easy vote on Survivor. You got to always make everything complicated. I mean, that's like the...
Carson, who's
worst nightmare is ever like a boring, like straightforward vote that doesn't have at least a shot in the dark getting played.
True. We completely forgot. Sorry, my one other butt tattoo idea. Sorry for you. That's
yes.
yes.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any other good butt tattoos, but I just want to.
I'm sure that there are plenty. No doubt.
All right.
Let me see if there's anything else from this episode as far as my sounds go. But no, I feel like we got to all the other big things that I wanted to talk about heading into this week. You have a prediction for who's going to go home, Grace?
Next week, let's say that it's Jamie from RHAP.
Jamie.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that she was bouncing back. I felt like that when Kane was out looking for the thing, that like Matthew was like, you see, like I felt like that she was like, oh, she's like, you got it. Yep, you're right. You're like, I felt like that she was like buttering up to Matthew.
I mean, I don't want that to be true, but I also think if like Ratu loses and then it's like, okay, should we get out Kane? But and then this, the tribe strength. Or like, I would like to see Jamie stay, but that's where I'll place my bet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What about you? Who do you think's going home?
I think it's going to be Sarah. I wonder, on a show where there's never. Have you ever seen an easy vote on Survivor? I think that might be as close as we get when Tika goes to the tribal council, and ultimately, I didn't really know what Sarah could do. Like, I don't even know what they're gonna like. Are they gonna show like somebody saying like, "But should we vote out Carolyn?"
And what is she? She has the inherited advantage. There's no way she could.
Nothing.
It's nothing you can do, right?
Nothing she could do. I mean, maybe she could sort of like say, "Hey, I'll give it to you, Jam, if you save me."
Interesting.
I don't know.
Well, I think then you just get. I mean, classic like the last few seasons, you just steal the advantage. I think at that point, give it to me before, then vote him out.
Give me a fake one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I do want to encourage everybody to check out the rest of the Survivor podcasts on the network over the next couple of days. Whatever your flavor of Survivor coverage is, we have something for you in our Survivor podcast feed. robhasawebsite.com/Survivor feed. Also, be on the lookout for my most recent Survivor burning question. I did a deep dive about what happens to survivors when they lose their vote. I spent about 30 minutes talking about that. That is up for the patrons. We'll put it out for everybody else coming up here on Tuesday. Not to mention, we will have the kickoff of the start of our week 3 coverage. Stephen Fishback is going to be back for the Survivor Know-It-Alls coming up on Wednesday night at 9:15 p.m. Eastern. Grace, I know you always have a bunch of stuff going on.
Yes, I won't go too long. So just promote, obviously the Daily Succession podcast. We're wrapping up our Last of Us coverage, weekly movies with Errol and I. This week we're talking about Scream 6. Are you a Scream person, Robbie?
I was back in the day.
New one's okay. It's fun. It's in New York City. So yeah. And a whole lot more. Anything else I'm doing, follow me on Twitter at Hi From Grace, and I will be sure to tweet about it.
Okay. All right. Grace, thank you so much for making time to do this. Have the utmost respect, because I feel like across all of RHAP post show recaps, is there anybody doing more podcasts than you?
Mike and Chappelle, I think, or we're always competing. I think for some of these, who's doing the most. I think.
Yeah,
you and Josh.
No, but Chappelle does a lot. I don't know if he does like he'll have days where he's doing a bunch.
Yeah,
but
he has these weeks where he really, on everything.
Yeah. He has a lot of other like non-podcast interests that he has in his real life. I mean, for me, this is all I have. That's all I do.
Yeah. Succession coming back. I think you right. I'm going to chat about Succession on the chatting with Josh and Jess, and I think we'll announce more of our coverage. But you're going to be talking every week about it.
I can't wait.
It's very Survivor, and it's the final season. Who's going to win? It's almost like we're heading on the Survivor finale, final tribal council. I think.
Yeah. Should be a lot of fun. All right, Grace, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks everybody for joining us for another feedback show. After this week's episode, send us in your feedback questions. robhasawebsite.com/voicemails as well. Looking forward to seeing what happens next. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.